Hello, and there's a lot of talk on forums and YouTube videos as to which is the best gun in Battlefield 4, and it comes down to these three most of the time: the Ace-23, the M416 and the L85A2. Now a lot of times people are using the Synthic stats, which tell you exactly what a gun does, but this relies on you being a good player. So I'm wondering, what is the best gun for an average player? And so I'm going to test them and see what the result is. So I'll start off with a full auto comparison, and we'll start with the Ace-23 using my usual setup, which is laser sight, compensator and stubby grip. And we'll do the full auto test in the way we did the test for the M416, which is at 25 meters from this wall, and we'll just full auto burst up the wall without pulling back the recoil, so we can see what kind of pattern we get. And as you can see, we get three patterns, one which goes slightly left, two which go slightly right. So this is what we expect for the Ace-23. Looking at its stats, it's got more of a pull to the right than it has to the left. So I've done this 12 times, and when we combine them all together we get this pattern for the Ace-23, which is up and a little bit to the right. So if we look at the M416 with the same setup, and we full auto up the wall, we start getting what we'd expect from the M416, which is up and to the right. The M416 has more right hand recoil than the Ace-23 does, and it has less left hand recoil than the Ace-23. So you're pretty much guaranteed that this gun is going to go up and to the right slightly. So again, did that 4 times to get 12 patterns, and then if we overlay all those we get this, which is similar to the Ace-23's, maybe a bit tighter and a bit more to the right. So the gun we're going to struggle with is the L85A2, because sites like Synthic have no stats for it. So we're going to have to test this one blind. Now firing at the wall, see, we get a pretty vertical line, so this gun isn't pulling left or right very much. It seems to have balanced recoil, and if we look closer we'll see, yeah, we're pretty much just straddling those vertical lines. So again, did this 4 times and overlaid them to get this result, and so we get an almost vertical column that slightly fans out. And if we then add that to the other two, we can see that the M416 and the Ace-23 are pretty similar. The M416 might be a bit tighter. The L85A2 is vertical, but less shots are hitting the wall because the L85A2 has more vertical recoil. On average you got 21 shots hitting the wall on the L85A2 and 26 shots hitting the wall on the other two. Next, let's have a look at the hip fire and do some tests on that. So we'll start with the Ace-23, and this time we're 10 meters away from a wall, hip firing full auto with no recoil compensation, and do 4 tests on that as well, which gives 8 results, which when we combine them together gives us a hip fire for the Ace-23 that looks like this. Quite well grouped at the start and then wanders off up and to the right. So if we look at the L85A2, doing the same test against the same wall from the same distance, and the patterns we get are like this, and when we combine all those together we end up with a hip fire pattern like this. It's pretty tight, it's straight up and down, and we don't have very many shots deviating off to the sides. So if we look at the M416 in the same way, firing at the same wall, and then repeating that test 4 times to give us 8 results again. This time the pattern is pretty similar to the Ace-23's. It's quite tight at the start and then drifts off and up to the right, fanning out. When we put the patterns side by side, we can see that they're all much of a muchness. The M416 seems to have a few more shots going off to the right more. Ace 23 is more vertical, and the L85A2 is pretty much just vertical with a slight fan out. So there's not a huge difference at 10 meters when you're hip firing, which is an area a lot of people will say the Ace 23 dominates at. So let's compare them for single shot accuracy. And for this test I'm going to use the side of that little building there and these pile of boxes up here, which using the rangefinder on one of the sniper rifles I can tell you is 88 meters away from these boxes. So what I'm going to do is tap fire single shots, letting the gun recover every time, and so the grouping we'll get will be like this, and that should represent the accuracy of the gun over range. I did the test for all three guns and these are the results side by side. So each of these images is to scale, and as you can see the groupings are all fairly similar. There's a few deviations, but on the whole they're the same size. So none of these guns really has an advantage in accuracy at range. So let's compare their rates of fire, and here it becomes a bit tricky because the L85A2 has several rates of fire specified on different forums and websites, from 650 rounds per minute to 1000. So let's fire it and see how fast it actually is. So that's over a bit quick, but it comes out at 2.22 seconds for 31 rounds, and if we slow it down you can see the clips from well before the first shot being fired until the hand starts coming off the gun to reload at the end. So 60 divided by 2.22 gives us 27 bursts per minute. 27 times 31 gives us 837 rounds per minute, which is too many I think. So I tested the Ace 23 in the same method and that came out at 797 rounds per minute when we know it's 770. So using that inaccuracy and putting it on the 837 we get 808 rounds, which I think we can safely say means that the L85A2 is firing at 800 rounds per minute. So it's faster than the Ace 23 at 770 and it's faster than the M416 at 750. After all that testing, are we any close to finding out what is the best gun of these three? Well, I'm not sure. A lot of the differences are very small. So if we look at the full auto comparison, we've got the Ace 23 and the M416 almost identical, and the L85A2, the only difference is that its pullback is going to be vertical. Now for an average player like me who doesn't practice that much, the L85A2's recoil is much easier to compensate for than the Ace 23 and the M416, both of which you have to pull the mouse down and to the left. Now the Ace 23 is also more unpredictable because its left and right recoils are more similar than the M416, which is definite to the right. So I'm giving this to the L85A2, even though the M416 has got the lowest vertical recoil. For me it's the horizontal recoil that's the hardest to control. So the L85A2's straight pullback is much easier. So let's have a look at the hip fire comparison, and to be fair there's very little difference between any of these at 10 meters. If you consider the top half of the patterns you're probably never going to fire, then they're almost identical, as are their single shot groupings. There's nothing in this test to say that any of these guns is more accurate than the others at long range with an aim shot. So for these I'm going to have to call it a draw. You know, they're all equally good, equally bad at hip fire and single shot. Rate of fire is another metric often used for comparisons of guns, and the L85A2 is the clear winner in this. But for me, the difference between 750 and 800 rounds per minute isn't going to be a massive difference. People say that in a gunfight you need rate of fire. What you need is to be able to hit the other person. So this is my winner, the L85A2, and it's simply down to its recoil and its rate of fire. The fact that its recoil is purely vertical means I can just simply pull down on the mouse and compensate for the recoil, and its rate of fire means that I've got a good chance of winning in a toe-to-toe gunfight. I'm really a casual battlefield player. I don't have time to practice with guns and manage recoil and go through all the stats. What I need is a gun that's nice and simple and I can have fun playing with. And that's the L85A2. Thanks for watching, and just remember that because this is my best gun doesn't mean it's going to be yours. Just play with what you enjoy.